Hello, this is Lilian, welcoming you to the 1925th edition of the Enfield Talking newspaper, Dateline the 17th of October 2013. The readers this week are Joan, Beverley, Rod and myself, Lilian, with Colin on the controls. The items that we will be reading come from our local newspapers, the Enfield Gazette and Advertiser and the Enfield Independent, and are their copyright. Our title music is Country Rock Polka, composed by Pat Prilly, Fernand Boulan, Harry Brewer, and performed by Jean-Jacques Perry, and is used with his kind permission. Local stories include "We should have acted sooner," admits Enfield Council, as Haringey is hit by another child abuse scandal. Legal battle to save Chase Farm underway. Businesses cry out for financial aid. And Homes Plan protesters will not give up their fight. And now over to Beverley, who will read the first item of local news.
Defiant council bosses have launched a last-ditch legal bid to stop frontline services at Chase Farm Hospital being decimated. In a rare show of cross-party unity, every councillor present at a meeting of the full council at the Civic Centre in Silver Street last Wednesday night backed taking legal action against the decision to remove accident and emergency and maternity services from the hospital in the Ridgeway, Enfield. Delivering a speech which slammed the widespread downgrade of the hospital, Council leader Doug Taylor announced the authorities' intention that papers to issue proceedings will be lodged with the court as early as next week. And the next morning, a spokesman confirmed that the council had written to the NHS and Jeremy Hunt, the Secretary of State for Health, to inform them that it intended to challenge, through judicial review, the Clinical Commissioning Group's decision to close the hospital's A&E department on December 9th. The challenge is being taken on the grounds that the preconditions for closure laid down by former Secretaries of State in 2008 and 2011 have not been met. Mr. Taylor finished his condemnation of the decision by tabling a motion to commence legal proceedings to challenge the decision. Every councillor in the chamber voted for the motion. The basis for the council's legal challenge is that promises of 4 new primary care centres and to improve GP services before any services are taken away from Chase Farm have not been honoured. The assurances were among 16 recommendations made by an independent reconfiguration panel, comprising clinicians, managers and independent members who reviewed the strategy in 2008 and again in 2011, which were ratified by then Health Secretary Andrew Lansley. The Council has made it clear it will not be able to challenge the principle of the clinical strategy itself and says that legal action will cost about £100,000, but expects to recover the costs if it is successful. Kieran McGregor of the Save Chase Farm campaign has welcomed the news. Chase Farm Group is delighted by the decision of the local authority to proceed with legal action, he told the Advertiser. Chase Farm Group recognises that the decision to downgrade Chase Farm is in breach of the IRP recommendations of 2008, and we are hopeful that the judiciary will recognise the flaws in the decision to downgrade services at the hospital.
Small businesses say they could face financial crisis if they are not given aid help with business rates. Shopkeepers in parades in one part of the borough have called on Enfield Borough Council for a helping hand paying the rates, the equivalent of council tax for companies. Empty shop windows have become a familiar sight in the past few years, with real concern for the future of the high street as it competes with out-of-town shopping centres. However, with the first draft of the council's budget for 2014-15 coming at the end of the year, businesswoman Trish Kelly, who owns Individualistic in Lancaster Road, is hoping shops in this corner of Enfield can be protected. She said, We have seen a lot of shop fronts become emptied during the past few years, and we do not want this to continue. A reduced business rate or rebate on our existing rates from the council would certainly see more shops and indeed shoppers back in this part of Enfield. Business rates are a tax on the property occupied by a business and are determined by the size of the premises used. Piloted schemes have previously been set up in Edmonton and Enfield Town, in which the council has helped to pay a percentage of their business rates, something the jewellery shop owner wants to see in Lancaster Road and Chaseside, Enfield. She said, "It's good that the council has provided specific help for businesses in Edmonton and Enfield Town, and we think shops in this area would benefit from support too." Enfield North MP Nick Dubois supports the idea. He said, "There's a clear message from local shops and businesses to Enfield Council here. Simple measures that have been tried elsewhere should be offered equally throughout the borough." Without regulations, Mrs. Kelly revealed her fears for the future of shops in the area. She added, "We have been working on a petition for more than 6 months, and the majority of shop owners have signed it. There are lots of shops here, and I fear that many will be in real trouble if no help is given."
Enraged protesters are planning to take legal action to stop a housing development being built at a disused university site. Plans for more than 230 homes at the former Middlesex University site in Cat Hill, Southgate, have been given the go-ahead, but campaigners are not giving up their fight. The group have called upon legal teams who will be sending a pre-action protocol letter to the planning department at Enfield Borough Council and the Mayor of London's office, advising them that if the application is not overturned, the campaigners will seek a judicial review. This comes after Enfield Council issued a formal notice giving Housing Association London and Quadrant, L&Q, the all-clear to redevelop the former university campus. Leader of the protesters, Kim Coleman, of Mansfield Avenue, Barnet, is confident that despite the latest setback, they will prevent this from going ahead. She said, "We have worked tirelessly to get the right decision, and we will not give up now. Our barrister is 98% certain we can get the decision revoked, and we will be pursuing this to its rightful end. The case will cost the protesters £20,000, and they have so far raised £12,000 of that total." However, the letter to residents from Ms. Coleman states that although this may be costly, it is a small price to pay in comparison to the ultimate cost of the development. The Housing Association defended its plans. Andy Rowland, L&Q's Land and Projects Director, said, "The ecological impacts of our scheme were considered by Natural England and the Environment Agency and by the Council's own specialists. None of those bodies raised any objections to the approach which has been taken. L&Q's plans have been thoroughly scrutinised by officers of Enfield Council and the Greater London Authority, and were considered in detail by councillors and the Mayor of London before receiving their approval." Despite the threat of a judicial review, Mr. Rowland said he was pleased that Enfield Council had given the all-clear. He said, "We are very pleased to have now received formal planning approval from Enfield Council. Our contractors are on site preparing for a development that will create 231 well-designed homes that match the character of the local area. We will carefully adhere to the commitments that we made in the planning process. As long-term stewards of the Cat Hill Ponds, we will implement a 25-year woodland management plan to conserve valuable mature and veteran oak trees across the site and encourage native woodland species, further improving the diversity and value of the woodland habitat for wildlife." Enfield Council has declined to comment.
A youth worker was more than a little surprised when he was singled out on a prime-time national television for his inspirational work with teens. Charity boss Andy Chamberlain had no idea that one of his colleagues at the North London Street Dance Academy had gone behind his back to nominate him for a special mention on ITV's Surprise programme. All Andy knew was that his assistant manager Nicola Brown had contacted the show's bosses when they put out a call for charities to get in touch. A film crew visited earlier this year and filmed a few classes and the dancers, who perform under the name EN2 Crew, and conducted a few interviews, and that was the last Andy heard. Then he was told they would have to go back to meet the producers. It was a bit strange, really, he said. It was the day of the Enfield Town show in September, and we had to leave that early and rush down to central London to the ITV studios. Then someone told us the producer we were meant to meet had left to look after her sick child, and while we were there, they would shove us in to watch a show instead. But we hadn't had a drink all day. We were ushered into a big studio, and honestly, I was so thirsty. Then gradually it started to dawn on me that it might be surprise. And when the spotlight landed on me, the adrenaline kicked in and I was able to answer questions. I forgot all about being thirsty. During the show, which was screened earlier this month, Nicola explained that she had nominated him for a special mention for his tireless dedication to the young people of Enfield. A visibly gobsmacked Andy told presenter Holly Willoughby that working with the young people and seeing the change that comes about when their confidence grows was hugely rewarding. Andy set up the charity more than 4 years ago after realizing that hip-hop and street dance were the ideal way to inspire young people, as turning up for rehearsals gave them more motivation and direction than simply playing ping-pong or table football at a youth club. Looking to the future, the man who was recognized on national television for all his hard work remains modest. If being on TV boosts the profile of our fundraising efforts, that would be fantastic, he said. We did get some funding from the Enfield Residents Priority Fund and the Awards for All scheme, but we really need business sponsorship or a long-term arrangement now, as we are working towards establishing a national curriculum of youth dance. Classes run by the North London Street Dance Academy are held in Brigadier Hall in Brigadier Hill, North Enfield.
Enfield Southgate MP David Burrows has reached the podium in the dog-eat-dog world of canine competition for a second successive year. Mr. Burrows and his 2-year-old Labrador Chomley finished third at the Westminster Dog of the Year competition on Thursday, October 10th. Judges from the Kennel Club and Dogs Trust were impressed by the pair's devoted friendship and commitment to canine issues in their constituency. However, this dog was not to have its day, being picked to top spot by Rutland and Melton MP Alan Duncan with his dog Noodle. Dewsbury MP Simon Revel with his dog Harry claimed second place. Mr. Burrows said, "Both myself and Chomley were delighted to not only make it into Hansard, but onto the podium by coming in third. We both had great fun, and the event was a fantastic opportunity to promote responsible dog ownership."
A man has been jailed for an unprovoked and alcohol-fueled attack on a pub-goer. Joe Elliott, 28, of Mayfield Crescent, Edmonton, was sentenced to 4 years behind bars when he appeared at Basildon Crown Court in Essex on Thursday. Elliott was jailed after pleading guilty at an earlier hearing to attacking a man with a pint glass at the White Horse in Southend-on-Sea on June the 7th, 2011. His 31-year-old victim was left with severe cuts to his neck and jaw, which required a number of stitches. Essex Police launched a media campaign to try and track down Elliott, including appealing for information via the BBC's Crime Watch programme. Through this publicity, Elliott was identified and arrested in March. Investigating officer Detective Constable Richard Walker said, "Despite the passage of time, this case shows that we will not close a case until every avenue has been exhausted. This offence dates back to June 2011, but the victim will suffer its effects for a lifetime as he has been permanently scarred. This alcohol-fuelled, unprovoked attack that Elliot himself could not explain may not have been solved without the positive response from the public as a result of the media appeals through local press, BBC Crime Watch and Crime Stoppers, and Joe Elliot would have gone unpunished."
Parents were blown away by support they received at a fundraising event for their child who has a rare brain disorder. The event, hosted by Jade Penny, 23, and Mark Riley, 24, aimed to raise money for physiotherapy treatment for their son, Lucas Riley. The 3-year-old has cerebral palsy, a brain disorder that can cause problems with movement, learning, and speech. Mum Jade admitted she was surprised at the sheer number of people who turned up and was extremely grateful. She said, "I was not expecting to see so many people that I didn't know. It was a really great night and we were blown away by the support that was shown. We even ran out of raffle tickets because we only bought 300. This will go a long way towards helping Lucas with his physiotherapy treatment. I want to thank everyone who came along, and we managed to raise £5,000 in 5 hours, which was extraordinary." More than 400 people attended the fundraiser at Enfield Working Men's Club in Ordnance Road, Enfield Wash, on Saturday, October 12th. The money will be used for specialist physiotherapy at the Bobath Centre in East End Road, Finchley, which offers tailored therapy for children with cerebral palsy.
Disabled drivers will now be given a whole floor in a multi-storey car park, after fears that their spaces would be lost. Motorists last month raised concerns that new parking tariffs and payment systems at an Enfield town multi-storey car park would see their free parking put into doubt. Parsonage Gardens resident Alison Enger, who suffers from chronic fatigue syndrome, complained about a proposed payment system which would see customers pick up a ticket on arrival and pay on the way out. But Enfield Borough Council has now announced that a whole floor at the Palace Gardens car park will be given to disabled drivers free of charge. After hearing the latest news, the 53-year-old said, "Thank you, Enfield Council, for listening to the views of the public." Councillor Joan Laban, who speaks for the Conservative group on parking and motoring, said, "I am glad the Council has finally seen sense and decided not to implement this policy. This U-turn is a success for those who oppose the removal of free parking for blue badge holders at Palace Gardens car park." Councillor Chris Bond, Enfield Council's Cabinet Member for Environment, said, "These measures will help all our shoppers get into our town centres and spend their money, giving our businesses a helpful boost."
Council tenants illegally subletting their properties have been granted an amnesty until the end of this month before a crackdown begins. A change in the law making illegal subletting a criminal offence is expected soon, with the most serious cases punishable by a jail term of up to 2 years and a considerable fine. In addition to the prison sentence and fine, courts will have the power to make a tenant repay any profits which they have made. Before this rule change takes place, Enfield Council has said that tenants who are subletting illegally and who return their keys before October the 31st will not be prosecuted. Ahmed Oykana, Cabinet Member for Housing, said, "We cannot allow people to cheat the system and deprive those in genuine housing need, and I warn them that we will use the full force of the law." In the past 3 years, the Council's housing investigation team has recovered 120 properties for legitimate use. In light of the new law, the team will be doubling in size to increase its capacity to investigate illegal subletting. Tenants who wish to return their keys to the council or anyone who wants to report suspected housing fraud should contact the fraud team on 0208 379 4289. That is 0208 379 4289.
Soil contaminated with toxins has been discovered on the site of last summer's Enfield Carnival. In answer to a question from Enfield Highway Ward Councillor Toby Simon, submitted before last Wednesday's full council meeting, Cabinet Member for Environment Chris Bond admitted that an examination of the sports ground in Goldsdown Road, Brimsdown, had uncovered contaminated soil. But Mr. Bond was emphatic that the contamination does not present a risk to local residents. The investigation into contamination levels on the site was carried out after the council became aware that improvement works were being carried out to football pitches. The admission came as a shock to Carnival Chairman John Ashton, who said he had been frustrated by Enfield Council's chaotic attitude to rumours that traces of toxins had been found in the ground in the summer. From my point of view, we were being told two different things, he said. At the time of the carnival, on Saturday, August 10th, Mr. Ashton, who has lived in Enfield since 1946, was furious that rumours and confusion over toxic chemicals being found at the site had resulted in the day being a bit of a flop. Describing the conflicting messages that came from the council in the run-up to the carnival, he said, "I was told on the Friday before that we would go ahead, that the soil was not contaminated. But by then most of the people had made other arrangements. As was reported at the time, when rumours spread on a social networking site that an empty chemical container had been found on the site, many families were put off from attending the annual carnival." Mr. Ashton added, "People who followed the parade stopped at the fields and I asked them, 'Are you coming in?' Lots said they weren't, as they didn't want to be affected by the contamination. Half my stall holders didn't turn up." Despite the chaos that has surrounded getting to the nub of the issue, Mr. Bond stressed that Goldsdown Sports Limited, which leases the land from the council, had been asked to return the ground to its original condition.
After looking high and low for work, an Edmonton teenager has found his first job thanks to an open day at a Coca-Cola factory. Coca-Cola Enterprises is looking to change the statistics and provide an insight for unemployed job seekers to help them gain jobs. The scheme, Feeding Britain's Future, is the first initiative of its kind, giving people skills and expertise to work in factories and stores. Edmonton has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country, at nearly 14%. And Raymond Bradley, 19, of Kitling Terrace, Edmonton, has been turned down in the past. But after attending the factory day, he found a job at Edmonton Argos in Ravenside Close. He said, "I'm excited about starting my first job, but also very nervous at the same time." After attending Southgate College and gaining his Level 2 sports coaching badge, the Edmonton teenager believes it was very important to gain knowledge of the industry. He added, "It was a real eye-opener for me. They showed us around the site where we managed to see all the different parts behind the scenes of the company. We were then given advice about how to get jobs." Bill Muirhead, Education Programme Manager at CCE, said, "Feeding Britain's Future, led by research charity IGD, aims to galvanise the entire food and grocery sector to help 16 to 24-year-olds across Great Britain gain the skills they need to get into work. It is the first initiative of its kind, giving young people access to farms, factories and stores and first-hand knowledge of the skills needed for a career." Joanne Denny-Finch, Chief Executive at IGD, believes that they are playing a vital role in getting unemployed youths back into work and feels that people will grasp this opportunity.
Train operator Greater Anglia has promised Enfield Council that it will improve cleanliness and keep its ticket offices open for longer at Enfield Town Railway Station. The company agreed to take action as a result of complaints from the council following the midweek Europa League football match between Tottenham Hotspur and the Norwegian club Tromsø on September the 19th. Many Spurs fans were delayed getting to the game because the ticket office at the station in Southbury Road, Enfield, was closed. With only 2 automated ticket machines available, supporters face long queues before being able to embark on the 10-minute journey to White Hart Lane station. Greater Anglia has now promised the council it will keep the ticket office at the station open later when necessary. In a separate issue flagged up by the local authority, the company also promised to try to do more to deal with litter on platforms. Cabinet Member for Environment Chris Bond said, "We need a good quality, safe train service which meets the needs of residents. We identified some issues that were of concern to residents, and we are grateful that Greater Anglia has promised to sort them out." A Greater Anglia spokeswoman said, "Wherever possible, we are now extending the opening hours of Enfield Town Station's ticket office on match days, and we are making a concerted effort to improve the station cleanliness, including undertaking a special pressure clean of the booking hall floor in the coming weeks."
With a year to go until the centenary of the First World War, Enfield Southgate MP David Burrows has urged more community projects to apply for funding. Heritage Lottery Fund is making at least £1 million available each year until 2019 for community projects, educating people and researching into the Great War. Grants between £3,000 and £10,000 will be allocated, and the MP is advocating projects to research local heritage from the war and create a community archive amongst other schemes. He said, like many areas across the UK, the impact of the First World War on the people of Enfield Southgate was extensive. For those who want to find out more about its legacy or who wish to mark the centenary, I urge them to get in touch with the Heritage Lottery Fund. Heritage Lottery Fund Chairman Dame Jenny Abramsky said, "The impact of the First World War was far-reaching, touching and shaping every corner of the UK and beyond. The Heritage Lottery Fund's new programme will enable communities to explore the continuing legacy of this war and help young people in particular to broaden their understanding."
We have now reached the end of side 1 of this tape. Please stop your machine now, take out the cassette, turn it over and start side 2.